Hello and welcome to Competitive Crunch. My name is Spade and today I will talk about past generation Pokemon that got upgraded or buffed up in Generation 6 Pokemon X and Y. And I have made myself like a top 10 list to hopefully make things more interesting and to keep things more organized. And on this list I decided I would not include Mega Evolutions because they're kind of the obvious picks. And I've talked about the Megas anyways in a separate episode. And besides the Mega Evolutions, there's a bunch of Pokemon that got upgraded due to some other different means like new abilities, new attacks, type changes, or some mechanic changes, stuff like that. So I thought I would like to make an episode dedicated to those Pokemon. And that is the topic of the day. But before we get started, I just want to say that I tried looking into this topic as objectively as possible, but still, in the end, this is my personal opinion, not the absolute truth. And now, with the formalities out of the way, without further ado, let's just jump right into the topic with my personal pick, number 10, which is Exploud. And Exploud gained a new attack called Boom Burst, which is a special move, 140 base power. And coupled with Exploud's ability Scrappy, nothing is immune to this amazing attack. And now, I don't think this is gonna make Exploud a higher tier player, but I would still imagine this turning Exploud into a dangerous lower tier wall breaker, coupled with the Boom Burst and the Scrappy, and the fact that this move can also now hit through substitutes, and coupled with Exploud's respectable bulk, that could definitely come into handy in many situations. But Exploud has the respectable base 91 attack, a special attack, so coupled with the normal typing, it does gain stab 1.5, same type attack bonus, of course, from using Boom Burst, so it can do some serious damage with this move. And also coupled with the coverage moves that it has, like Surf and Fire Blast, it can kind of muscle its way through some steel and rock types that would resist the Boom Burst. And I guess also Focus Blast, I believe you got Shadow Ball, you got some nice coverage moves, but Exploud is always kind of being brought down by, in the end, I guess it's typing and the base stats that it has, the distribution of the stats, and you know, only 490. It did gain 10 more special defense randomly in this generation, which is kind of cool. It can now take some special hits slightly better, so that's a nice little thing. But Boom Burst is where it's at, and I would imagine once we actually get the lower tiers, this thing could do some serious work down there. And then we move on to number 9, which is Conkeldurr. And in this generation, Gen 6, Conkeldurr gained a new best friend in form of Assault Vest. Many Pokemon can use this item, but arguably Conkeldurr is one of the better users of it, because when you look at the stats of Conkeldurr, one of its main downsides is the low special defense. And with this new item, Assault Vest, that raises your special defense by 1.5 times, but forces you to only use damaging moves. This is a really nice item for Conkeldurr, because it kind of does patch up the one weakness that Conkeldurr had at the expense of only using damaging moves. But the nice thing about Conkeldurr that many other Assault Vest users don't have is that it does have Drain Punch, which is one of its main attacking moves. And unlike other Assault Vest users, like something like Goodra from the new generation, as the others cannot really use any kind of recovery, Conkeldurr can rely on Drain Punch, its main attacking move, to dish out some damage and also gain some HP, while it actually doesn't have a way to recover because of the Assault Vest. You cannot have any sort of recovery move. Not that Conkeldurr would have anything in the first place besides like Rest, but because you don't have leftovers and you still gain the bulk and you can still rely on Drain Punch to get some of your HP back. That is a really nice combination that you got going on here. And besides that, Conkeldurr can also spam the ever so annoying knockoff in this generation, and I would imagine knockoff being used over Payback a lot in this generation, simply because of the utility. Conkeldurr is really slow, so it can definitely abuse Payback, but the utility that Knockoff brings by knocking out the opponent's items is a really valuable asset on any team. And in the past, you know, whenever you're facing a Conkeldurr, you're usually just fine. You know, unless it gets too many bulk ups, you'll be just fine, and you can, you know, switch in most physical walls into it. You don't need to worry. But now with the presence of Knockoff, you really need to watch out when you switch into Conkeldurr, because now you may just end up getting your item knocked off. And definitely in the competitive scene, items are everything. They're really useful, and if you lose your item early game, that may just spell your doom later on in the match. So now you actually really have a reason to fear switching into Conkeldurr, because it can just spam that utility knockoff and actually still do some respectable damage with that too. And now with the Assault Vest, I guess you could still run like a power-up punch if you do still want to have a way to boost up, although I do believe the priority of Mach Punch is more valuable than the setting up with power-up punch, because Conkeldurr is still really slow, so it really enjoys having that Mach Punch to nap those kills when opponents' Pokemon are low on health. So I don't think power-up punch is anything too significant, but the still the combination of Assault Vest and Knockoff has kind of changed Conkeldurr for the better. It has some options that it didn't have in the past. And then we move on to number 8, which is Togekiss, which of course got turned into a Fairy Flying type Pokemon in Generation 6 instead of a normal Flying. And this basically makes Togekiss a great Dragon check, and I'm saying check because the presence of Togekiss has already changed the dragons to a point where things like Garchomp and like maybe Haxorus, they're running like Stone Edge or Rock Slide. They kind of need to do that because with the Fairy Flying typing, Togekiss has the unique immunity to both Dragon and Ground coverage, and we all know how great the Dragon Ground coverage is, especially coupled with something like Fire Blast that, you know, a lot of dragons tend to carry, or Fire Punch, and Togekiss can take any of those moves really. And Togekiss is basically a hard counter to the ever so popular Sub SD set by Garchomp, and because of that the set is kind of losing popularity right now, and a lot of people have started to run like Stone Edge or even Poison Jab on their dragons to specifically deal with Togekiss. Its presence in the metagame is already feared because of this new unique typing. And besides the those immunities, the Fairy Flying does provide useful resistance, 4 times resistance to Bug and Fighting, which are 2 really common typings in the OU tier. Especially everything just carrying U-turn and spamming that. Togekiss will not be taking too much chip damage from that, and you know, 4 times resistance to Fighting is also really appreciated when everything runs like close combat. And besides that, I guess Togekiss could be running Defog, but I think mainly it benefits from a new move called Dazzling Gleam as its new stab move, I would say. But for the other part, it's still the same old annoying Togekiss, but its typing is arguably a lot better in this generation, and that's why Togekiss is gaining a lot of popularity in this new metagame. But the main factor that Togekiss has is that it really limits the dragons in the OU with its unique typing and the immunity to Dragon and Ground. And then number 7, I got Gengar right here, and we're not talking about the Mega Evolutions as I said earlier, but besides the Mega Evolution, Gengar did gain something, because obviously in this generation the Steel types got nerfed, because they no longer resist Ghost, so that definitely makes Gengar's job in the standard metagame a lot easier. It has more freedom to spam its favorite move, Shadow Ball, definitely. And also with the poison typing, it does have the useful resistance to the new fairy types, not to mention it actually now has a reason to run its secondary stab moves in the form of Sludge Bomb or Sludge Wave, which I do believe is a Dream World exclusive move for Ghastly. And now that, you know, Pokemon Bank, I guess it's now out again in Japan. Hopefully it will be out soon in other countries too, in the Europe and America and other places. So we will all then get our access to Sludge Waving Gengar if we so desire. But Gengar now actually has a reason to run its secondary stat move, which it hasn't really done in the past. But now that Poison is more useful offensively and defensively, that makes Gengar slightly more useful in this metagame. And also Gengar cannot be trapped by something like Shadow Tag because of the new Ghost type mechanics, but mainly Gengar just benefits from the freedom to spam Shadow Ball more freely against Steel types, and things like Jirachi don't wall it like they used to. So that is the thing with Gengar. But yeah, the spamming of Shadow Ball is the biggest change to Gengar, which is still gonna keep it a top tier OU player, despite the Mega Evolution getting banned in the Smogon metagame, that is. And then we move on to number 6, which is Crawdaunt. And Crawdaunt got some interesting changes coming to Gen 6. It gained a new egg move called Aqua Jet. We all know that's an old move, but it's new on Crawdaunt. And when you look at the stats of Crawdaunt, it's really a perfect user of the Aqua Jet. It has low speed but high attack, and coupled with adaptability, it can definitely do some work with it. And also a common move that Crawdaunt likes to carry, because it's a crab, it does have access to Crab Hammer, which got buffed up from 90 base power to 100. So that's a nice little 10 base power buff right there. And it can also spam the knockoff, and stab adaptability boosted knockoff. Oh man, that's a really dangerous move on Crawdaunt, because it gains stab and with adaptability, and it can just do massive damage with this move knockoff, not to mention the utility again. So first off, you have really trouble switching into the adaptability boosted 120 base power and 97 base power with the knockoff coupled, because how knockoff works, it's 65 base power, and when you knock off an item, it basically, I believe, powers up the move by 1.5 times, so that would be 97 base power. So 97 base power move coming from the 120 base power base attack of Crawdaunt, boosted by adaptability, boosted by something like Choice Band, which is definitely a great option on Crawdaunt now, especially with Aqua Jet now. Imagine how much damage the Crawdaunt is able to deal with the knockoff, and then on top of that you have the utility of getting rid of the item of the opponent. So that is a really, really great move on Crawdaunt without a doubt. Not to mention Steel types again are nerfed, so you don't need to even worry about Steel types switching into that, because yeah, you will still deal massive damage to them. And basically just deal massive damage to anything, even though Pokemon would resist it. It will still deal massive damage and get rid of the item. So spamming knockoff on something like that Choice Banded Crawdaunt is gonna be amazing. I haven't still tried that out, but I would really like to try this thing out. And also Crawdaunt gained a switcheroo, so if you're again running something like Choice Band, you could switcheroo the item over. Well, first you knock off some items, and then later on you could dump your Choice Band into some sort of wall and cripple it. Not really the best option, because you probably want to just have like super powerful coverage, but you know, it's an option. But mainly the knockoff and Aqua Jet are the new things on Crawdaunt that make it better than it used to be in the past. And with that, we move on to number 5, which is Galvantula. And we all know Galvantula for one move only, and that is Sticky Web, the new entry hazard. And this one single move basically just transformed Galvantula into a whole new Pokemon. It is so much better now. It actually just with the presence of Sticky Web, it kind of just became relevant in this generation. It was always kind of a lower tier gimmick. You know, it could spam the Compound Ice, Thunder, which is a cool thing, but now at the moment it is the fastest user of Sticky Web. And honestly, I got really nothing else to say about Galvantula. It's this one move that completely transformed Galvantula. But I guess with Bug Buzz now, it does have a niche to hit true substitutes because of the new sound-based move mechanics and stuff like that. But you know, it's kind of a novelty thing, which may come into play in some situations. But it's all about Sticky Web when it comes to Galvantula here. And with that being said, we move on to number 4, which is Bisharp. Oh yes, one of my favorites, definitely. And Bisharp is actually a Pokemon that kind of benefits with the presence of this new entry, has a Sticky Web, because with the Defiant, once one of your stats get lowered, you will actually get a attack boost of +2. So whenever a Sticky Web is present, you will gain instant +2, and coupled with the Sucker Punch, it's not even that big of a problem for Bisharp to have its speed lowered, because Sucker Punch does somewhat compensate for it. Of course, it is somewhat unreliable of a move, but you know, it's still a great move for Bisharp because it gains stab and everything on the Sucker Punch. But the Dark Steel coverage, besides everything, is actually slightly better in this generation. Of course, because of the nerf that Steel types did suffer. So that, in a way, kinda hurts Bisharp, but it's actually kind of unique that Bisharp is now one of the few, if not the only Steel type that does resist the Ghost and Dark moves, because it is partially Dark itself. So that's kind of a cool thing for Bisharp. So Ghost types that are, you know, slightly better in this generation, Bisharp is able to take those hits and deal with Ghosts with like Sucker Punch, or with Knockoff too. Bisharp is another Pokemon that can definitely abuse Knockoff, and actually, besides of just knocking off the item, it can do some massive damage with it, coupled with the utility. So that is a great thing right there. But the Dark Steel coverage is indeed better in this generation, and Bisharp, it doesn't necessarily need to rely on fighting coverage in form of like Brick Break or Low Kick as it used to in the past, because Dark Steel has a pretty good neutral coverage now. Of course, it's not perfect, but it is better than it used to be, because again, you can hit Steel types that are really common for neutral damage. So that's a great thing for Bisharp, without a doubt. And whenever there's Pokemon with Intimidate, also with that you will get the Defiant boost. You know, that's really nothing new. But, you know, just mentioning some things besides the Sticky Web. Besides Sticky Web, there's Intimidate, and of course you can switch into Defog now. And if you can also King's Shield doesn't do anything to you, because it will lower your attack by 2 stages and then just hit it right back at +2. So that's kind of funny thing too. But Defiant, just mainly a cool thing with the presence of Sticky Web in this generation. So for Bisharp, it's the Defiant with the Sticky Web, and then the Dark Steel coverage being better offensively in this generation, and also Knockoff, which it can just spam for massive damage, and the utility. So those are really great things for Bisharp in this generation. And then we move on to number 3, which is Scolipede. And Scolipede gained a couple of interesting things in this generation. The first one, of course, being the hidden ability Speed Boost. It used to have relatively useless ability Quick Feet, but now it has a Speed Boost, and it also gained 10 more attack. And definitely, when you couple Speed Boost and Sword Stance, you have a dangerous sweeper in your hands. But offensively speaking, though, Bug Poison is not really the greatest offensive typing. And even though Scolipede does have some nice coverage moves in form of like Earthquake and Rock Slide, and then Mega Horn for stab, you know, those two coverage moves, Earthquake and Rock Slide, they do not gain stab, so it's not, even after +2, you're not able to deal such massive damage. But I would still, at the moment it looks like Scolipede is in the UU tier, but what makes Scolipede still awesome is the fact that it does have Baton Pass. So even if Scolipede isn't really the best sweeper with the speed boost coupled with like Swords Dance, it can still Baton Pass the speed and the attack and potentially a substitute too. So I think Scolipede is probably going to replace Ninjask in the Baton Pass teams. Although Ninjask still has the higher base speed, which in some instances might make a difference, but arguably Scolipede has better typing and doesn't need to worry about the 4x weakness to Stealth Rock, and it is, you know, bulkier than Ninjask, so there's that too. But yeah, definitely the speed boost kind of transformed Scolipede into something a lot better than it used to be. And also it can have the utility spike support as it used to, and I guess toxic spikes too. But the utility of speed boosting and Swords Dancing and then baton passing all that away is amazing, and Scolipede basically is transformed into a great baton passer in this generation. And not to mention the base 100 attack that it now has, so it can do something offensively too, which is great for Scolipede. And with that, we move on to number 2, which is Mandibuzz. And Mandibuzz is an interesting Pokemon that, you know, it didn't really gain anything new per se, but it just gained from multiple mechanic changes when it came to Generation 6. First off, of course, we all know Mandibuzz as the #1 defogger, pretty much. And when Pokemon X and Y first came out, and we didn't have access to any of the defog users, and when people heard that defog is actually a thing now, people were looking for, hey, what is the best defog user in the game? And that is arguably Mandibuzz. And still, even though we now, I guess, technically have access to Pokemon Bank, you know, hopefully it will be released again to everyone soon in the other countries, but, you know, while we do still kind of have access to a bunch of Pokemon Bank Pokemon at the moment, Mandibuzz is still arguably one of the best users of defog. It has the really good natural bulk, and it has reliable recovery in form of Roost, so it's going to be sticking along in a match for a long time. It can just reliably heal itself with the Roost. And besides defogging, which is the main thing that Mandibuzz does, Overcoat got buffed up in this generation, so you can actually switch into Spore type moves, and of course Spore and Sleep Powder are relatively common of sleep inducing moves in pretty much every tier, and in OU too, especially with Smeargles running around now with Spores, and with Overcoat you can switch into Spore and you know, not get put to sleep. So that already, I'm not sure how much big of an impact. I guess on Smeargle that could impact it to a sense where people start running like Dark Void on it, I guess. But when people are running Spore on Smeargle, you can just switch Mandibuzz into it and not worry, and then defog away the hazards that it could potentially try to set up. So there's that. And of course, with the Steel type nerf again, Mandibuzz, another Pokemon that can spam knockoff, and now you can actually dish out some damage with it. And if you are worried about being a setup fodder, you have the option to run Foul Play. And again, with the Steel nerf, that is a lot better option, because, you know, if you have something like Excadrill trying to set up a Swords Dance on you, you just go for defog. It's neutral damage. After Swords Dance, you'll just knock out the sucker. So there is that, and these mechanic changes basically have made Mandibuzz a lot better. You got the defog, you got the Overcoat, and also with the Overcoat, Tyranitar is still a common Pokemon, so you're still immune to that sand that Tyranitar brings. So it has kind of good synergy, even if you decide to run that Tyranitar, which is a really good Pokemon in this generation, which a lot of people still use. So you don't need to worry about taking the residual damage, not to mention the utility of dodging Spores and Sleep Powders with this awesome ability. And so you got Defog, you got the Overcoat, and you got the Dark typing with the moves like Knock Off and Foul Play, which you can just spam around. And those changes basically made Mandibuzz a great Pokemon in this generation. It's just simply one of the best users of Defog, still is. And because of that, it's gaining some great usage in the competitive Pokemon scene at the moment in the singles metagame. And last but not least, number 1 in fact, I got Azumarill, which of course got transformed into a Fairy type in this generation. And this Fairy typing is definitely great offensively and defensively, because it can switch into like U-turns and or it can take U-turns and things like fighting type moves a lot better now because of the obvious resistances that the Fairy typing brings. And overall the Water Fairy is defensively great but offensively great too, and coupled with the Fairy typing, it gains the new physical and the only physical Fairy type move in the game, which is Play Rough, and that's a great stab move for Azumarill. And besides that, Azumarill with the new breeding mechanics, it can actually use the combination of Belly Drum and Aqua Jet, something that wasn't possible in the past but now is. And definitely Aqua Jet coupled with the huge power and Belly Drum is a great combination. Although Azumarill is still a great choice band user, and because Azumarill has that great natural bulk, you don't necessarily want to sacrifice your health with Belly Drum, but it is still an option that Azumarill did not have in the past. And it can definitely become a really dangerous wall breaker, because something like Skarmory tries to switch into you, and if Stealth Rocks are up, you'll just go for the Waterfall and one-shot it easy. Although something like Choice Banded Waterfall will still do a bunch of damage to Skarmory. But the coverage that Water Fairy has, it's really great for Azumarill. And when you couple that with something like Superpower, your coverage is pretty much set, and you will be hitting most of the metagame for neutral damage, and nothing really enjoys switching into Azumarill. Nothing is really safe when it comes to switching into this beast known as Azumarill. And arguably, out of all the old Pokemon that gained the Fairy typing, Azumarill is one of the more useful, especially coupled with the Play Rough, gained the awesome new stab move that can spam and hit everything really hard with. But that's all I really gotta say to Azumarill. But still, in my opinion, like, you have seen Azumarill in the metagame. It was always kind of stuck in the mid tier in the UU, but now it's a top tier OU Pokemon because of this new Fairy typing change, and that's why I decided to pick Azumarill as number 1. We all know how dangerous this Pokemon is, but you know, there's the Fairy typing change, which is just so great defensively and offensively, and you got the Play Rough, and you also got the option to run Belly Drum and Aqua Jet, something that Azumarill could not do in the past. And again, that is why Azumarill is my number 1 pick. But now, with the list over, I still decided I would have some runner-ups, and I actually have a bunch of them. I didn't include them in my list for a reason or another, but I still want to mention them, give kind of an honorable mention to these Pokemon. Starting with Flare Blitz Flareon. Finally, Flareon has access to the move that it has desired since Generation 4. People have been wondering why in the world Flareon doesn't have a great physical fire type move. In the past, it has needed to rely on something like Fire Fang and Flame Charge, which is absolutely pathetic. But now it finally has access to Flare Blitz. Unfortunately, it still faces competition from similar Pokemon like Entei and Emboar, so I'm not sure how much Flare Blitz is going to change Flareon, but it's just something that a lot of fans have desired for a long time, and finally Flareon has Flare Blitz. So there we go. And then got some other Fairy types I would like to mention. Clefable, Gardevoir, and Whimsicott that gained Fairy typing in this generation. But honestly, the main fairy types in the OU right now are kind of just Azumarill and the Togekiss, which I already mentioned. Not to mention some new ones like Florges and Sylveon and what have you. But these Pokemon, you know, they're, even though they got turned into fairy types, they're, you know, kind of just outclassed by other things. But still, fairy typing does bring them some useful resistances that they didn't have in the past. And Gardevoir, of course, gaining attraction because of its Mega Evolutions, and the same thing for Mobile too. But again, I'm not talking about Mega Evolutions here. But still, those are pretty good fairy types. Also, Clefable gained 10 more special attack, which is kind of nice for Calm Mining sets, especially because Bolt Beam kind of got nerfed in this generation. But good old Clefable gained 10 more special attack, so that is a pretty cool thing for it. Then got Chatot, which also has access to Boom Burst. On my list, I decided to pick Exploud because I believe it, in my opinion, it's kind of, it's hard to say is it a better Pokemon than Chatot, because they're both kind of different Pokemon in a sense, and they're different types too, and different stats and everything, different move pools. Chatot does have access to Nasty Plot, and also its signature move, Chatter, is now base 65 base power, and it always confuses your opponents. So that's kind of an interesting gimmick that Chatot could have, but still my personal preference is when it comes to boom bursting, at least my personal preference would be Exploud. But Chatot does have a few other new tricks too up its sleeve in this generation with Boom Burst and Chatter. And then Roserade, which no longer has to worry about its illegal egg move combinations, because now with the new breeding mechanics, with the father and the mother being able to pass down egg moves, you can have the option to run Toxic Spikes, and also Sleep Powder, all in the one set. Of course, entry hazards, especially Spikes and Toxic Spikes, not that useful anymore with the presence of Defog, but now at least you do have the option that you didn't have in the past. And in a way, if you want to have like a Technician Roserade, you kinda can benefit from the Hidden Power nerf, because you can run a 60 base power like Hidden Power Fire on it. Of course, you could do that in the past, but now you at least you don't need to lower your IVs too much in order to gain that base 60 Hidden Power if you want. But of course, that's kind of a gimmick. But besides that, you know, of course, Poison typing is more useful defensively, offensively in this generation, so Roserade could be spamming that Sludge Bomb. And also, it gained 10 more defense, and Roserade is kind of known for its bad defense, so this is definitely a nice little buff for Roserade overall. And then we got Kingdra, which kind of gained an interesting niche, because it can now kind of use its ability that it never really used in the past, which is Sniper, because of the new critical hit mechanics. After you give Kingdra Scope Lens and you use Focus Energy and you have the Sniper, it actually deals, I believe, 2.25 times the damage with the Sniper. So you can just spam like Draco Meteor and Hydro Pump and you will just always crit. Of course, you know, Focus Energy and Scope Lens can be used on a lot of other Pokemon, I guess, too, but because Kingdra has Sniper, that's where the main attraction has been with this with the new critical hit mechanics, and Kingdra can definitely pull it off, and it's definitely an interesting gimmick, to say the least. And then we got Dragonite, which kind of got a new best friend out of the new item called Weakness Policy. Arguably one of the better users of it, because when you think about Dragonite, it's like close to impossible to one-hit KO when it has its multi-scale intact. You need something like Mold Breaker to go through it, or something like that. But even something like 4 times super effective Ice Beam doesn't necessarily take out Dragonite, especially if it's like a neutral hit. You haven't boosted up or anything. Not sure what could, like Nasty Blood, Ice Beam. But anyways, Dragonite is known to be taking hits with multi-skill. So weakness policy is just really a perfect item to go with Dragonite, boosting up its attack and special attack, especially coupled with its move pool. All you really need is like Dragon Dance and then Earthquake and Dragon Claw, maybe Outrage, but preferably Dragon Claw, because you get the +2 attack, so you don't have to lock yourself. You still have massive attack and you don't need to lock yourself into a move. And then you can have either like Fire Blast or even Fire Blast, or I guess even the Fire Punch, but the fact that the item weakness policy raises your special attack too, you might as well go mixed and have more powerful Fire Blast and still coming from Dragonite's respectable special attack. So there's that, but Dragonite definitely, if not the best, one of the best users of weakness policy. That's probably the most common Pokemon that you see using weakness policy, and the presence of this item has already changed people's play styles to a point where people tend to go first for some neutral attack that will break the multi-skill and then follow with the super effective move, because people are just paranoid about Dragonite having weakness policy, because it's a really popular item at the moment, because again, Dragonite arguably one of the best users of it, so everybody is trying it out, and because of that, people are really scared that they don't want to do massive damage to Dragonite right off the bat, so they don't activate the weakness policy accidentally. So there is that. And then Smeargle, I guess I could have included in with the Galvantula that I had earlier, but I thought I would give all the credit to Galvantula, because Smeargle has always been the gimmick Pokemon that, you know, whenever there's a new generation, it will know pretty much all the new moves, except for a few exceptions. Like, I believe it still doesn't learn Chatter, which is like whatever. But the point being, Smeargle, the gimmick that learns every move, and with this generation, of course, it has gained attraction because it can use Sticky Web, which has really limited distribution, and of course, Smeargle has other useful utility moves with the fact that it can learn any move in the game, so you can couple Stealth Rocks and Spore with that, and you are pretty much set to go. But Sticky Web is the attraction with Smeargle at the moment too. In fact, I do believe Smeargle is being used more than Galvantula because of those other utility moves that it does have. So there is that. But Sticky Web is where it's at the moment. So yeah, then got Mamoswine also, which is arguably one of the better users of the new move called Freeze Dry, which is a special move. And even though Mamoswine is a physical attacker, this Freeze Dry actually helps Mamoswine to muscle its way through one of its more common counters, you could say, Rotom Wash. Because Rotom can easily take ice and ground type attacks, especially ground because it has Levitate, and it doesn't worry too much about taking Icicle Crash or Ice Shard or any of the sort, like Icicle Spear even. So with Freeze Dry, Mamoswine can kind of, like I said, muscle its way through a Rotom Wash, even though I guess something like Choice Banded Mamoswine could still deal with Rotom Wash relatively well, but you know, the standard set that usually is like Focus Sash and Stealth Rocks. You can slice in Freeze Dry in there, and you can still have the utility support, and you can still catch off those Rotoms on the Switch, which is a really nice thing for Mamoswine in this generation. And when you look at the list of Pokemon that have Freeze Dry, arguably Swinub or Mamoswine, its final evolution, is one of the best users of it. It's a real shame that not too many Pokemon, at least at the moment, have access to this new interesting move that is super effective. Ice type move, which is super effective against water type Pokemon. Really interesting concept, but Mamoswine can abuse this new move at least to an extent. Also, it can hit Gyarados, which is kind of common Pokemon at the moment because of the Mega Gyarados at the moment. At the moment, I'm saying too much. But Gyarados usually has Intimidate, so with this you could hit Gyarados for 4 times super effective damage, so that's kind of a cool thing too, because it has Intimidate, so you don't need to worry about that. So yeah, there's that, but it's still kind of a gimmick, but you do have the option to run Freeze Dry on Mamoswine to surprise your to at least surprise your main counter, which would be Rotom Wash. And then got Weavile, which actually learns Icicle Crash as an egg move. Let me actually check, is it on here on Pokemon Showdown Dex? It should be as an egg move. Where do we have egg moves here? Egg moves, there's Avalanche, but there we go, there's Icicle Crash. Yeah, indeed, it does learn Icicle Crash, and also Weavile could also spam Knockoff, although I believe because it's because Icicle Crash is a Gen 6 egg move, and Knockoff, if I'm not mistaken, a past generation Gen 5 or 4 move tutor move, it's not compatible with Icicle Crash, but I'm certain whenever Pokemon Z or whatever comes out, you will have the luxury of running both of these moves on Weavile, so definitely better stab options that Weavile didn't have in the past, because you needed to rely on like Ice Punch and then Night Slash, and definitely the knockoff utility again. You want to have that, not to mention 97 base power when you actually knock something out, or when you knock out an item, that is. And Icicle Crash definitely better than the Ice Punch, and then you can still run like priority Ice Shard, so that is a thing on Weavile. Definitely Choice Bandit set in the future would be cool with Icicle Crash and Knockoff, if only that is going to be possible. Who knows at this point, but Weavile definitely has some better stab moves right now. And then I would also like to mention Suicune, because of course with the new sleep mechanics, rest talking is slightly more reliable. It's still not really that recommended, but Suicune and the rest of the sleep talkers and Pokemon that would like to use rest, maybe something like Snorlax, can use it to a better extent in this generation because of the new sleep type mechanics, because sleep mechanics with the current sleep mechanics which are kind of like in Generation 4, yeah, they no longer reset like they used to in Gen 5, so using rest is slightly more reliable in this gen. I thought I would just like to give a little mention to that. And then last on my list I have Crobat, which is probably one of the fastest defoggers, if not the fastest defog user at the moment. And coupled with the new poison type mechanics, if you have Toxic on Crobat, it will never miss, so that's a nice little bonus. And of course poison typing slightly better offensively and defensively, so Crobat could be more relevant. But I do still kind of think that Crobat has the same issue as it had in the past generation, and that is the 4-move syndrome, because it's a really great utility support Pokemon, but it has so many great support moves that you just want to have them all, but you just cannot have them all. So it's kind of like a catch-22 kind of thing, that you want to have all those moves, but you can't have all those moves. But if you could, that could make Crobat great. It wants to have all those moves, and that's really the only thing that stops Crobat from like being a great support Pokemon, is that you always have to make that sacrifice what kind of support moves you want to have. You could have like Taunt, Defog, and Toxic, and Roost, and then of course you want to have some sort of attack like Brave Bird. And then because Poison is slightly better in this generation, perhaps you would like to have something like Cross Poison as an offensive poison type move, but you really don't have the slot to slice it in, so that's still kind of the problem with the Crobat. And I guess on the offensive perspective, it does have better Infiltrator ability now. So in the past, it really had no use with Infiltrator, but now it can actually, coupled with its Blazing Speed, which is like, is it 130 or something? I believe, base 130. And with the Infiltrator, you can hit through substitutes, and with the speed that Crobat has, you can outspeed majority of the metagame pretty much. And when you have something like Stab Brave Bird, you can just come through substitutes and just Brave Bird everything, and yeah, you don't need to worry about subs. So Infiltrator is actually a pretty useful ability on Crobat in this generation, but still kind of suffers from that 4-move syndrome. Bunch of great support moves, but it just doesn't have room for them all, which kind of hurts it. And offensively, its best move really is Brave Bird, so that still kind of hurts it. And only base 90 attack, and on the special side, you got base 70 special attack. It does have nasty block, but it doesn't really help it too much. But with that being said, I have gone through my random list of top 10 and then bunch of runner-ups. I just kind of want to mention a lot of other Pokemon too. So, but anyways, in case I missed something really relevant, let me know in the comment section below, and let me know your personal favorite Pokemon that got upgraded coming to Generation 6 from the past generations. So yeah, let me know that in the comment section below, and I will stop rambling and I will check you guys next time. There's again some changes in the UU beta metagame, so I'm possibly going to talk about that next time. Maybe, perhaps. We shall see. Until then, until next time, this is Spade rambling and signing out. Peace.